Hayes. Tom Martin. Here. Dave May. Mary McGinnis.
Here.
Susan Schaefbauer.
Perfect.
Right, yeah. Michael, sometimes known as David Weissenslu. Here. Stephanie Winchester and Charles McNeely is present. Annually at the first budget committee meeting, a budget chairperson is selected. The chairperson shall act as parliamentarian and encourage full participation of committee members in the budget process. Appointment shall be made by motion. I will entertain a motion for appointment.
I make a motion that we appoint Mayor McNeely. He has been learning parliamentary procedure, and basically that's all the chair does is run through parliamentary procedure in the meetings. And so I appoint him.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. It's moved and seconded that the budget committee appoints Charles McNeely. Let's record how members vote. Penny Cheek. Penny Chilton.
Yeah.
David Elkins.
Yes.
Alicia Franken.
Yes.
Christine Hayes. Tom Martin.
Yes.
Dave May. Mary McGinnis.
Yes.
Susan Schaefbauer.
Yes.
Michael Weissenslu.
Yes.
Stephanie Winchester.
Yes.
All right, we'll move forward then. The minutes of the April 13th, 2022 Budget Committee meeting were distributed beforehand. Are there any issues or concerns with the meeting minutes? If not, may I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the April 13th, 2022 Budget Committee minutes.
Second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Let's record how members vote. Penny Cheek. Penny Chilton.
Yeah.
David Elkins.
Yes.
Alicia Franken.
Yes.
Christine Hayes. Tom Martin.
Yes.
Dave May. Mary McGinnis.
Yes.
Susan Schaefbauer.
Yes.
Michael Weissenslu.
Yes.
Stephanie Winchester.
Yes.
And Charles McNeely votes in the affirmative. The affirmative. All right. City Manager Shepherd will present the budget message for fiscal year 2023-2024. He will also make opening administrative remarks and direct the committee's attention to background information included in each member's budget packets.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully you all received the proposed budget package. It's got the budget message in there. You can feel free to read along with me if you'd like, but this is the time each year where I'm required to read this out loud to you all. And we'll get started. Let me put my glasses on now. Honorable Mayor, City Council, Budget Committee, and citizens of Rockaway Beach. The staff is pleased to present to you the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2023-2024. Oregon budget law requires a budget message to be prepared by the budget officer and delivered at the first meeting of the budget committee. As required by law, the budget is balanced and proposes a spending plan for the coming year, which is based upon projected resources and the operational needs of the city. As always, restrictions imposed by revenues and fund balances will govern what expenditures can be made, staffing levels, and the projects that can be funded. This budget offers our city a comprehensive spending plan that promises significant public improvement projects, expanded service levels, and funding to lay the groundwork for a bright and well-planned future. Transient room tax and investment in Rockaway Beach. Transient room tax revenue increased significantly during the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic is now behind us, but TRT revenues remain strong. The city utilizes this highly restricted revenue source cautiously and seeks to use these funds as a direct investment back into our community. This budget year, TRT revenue expenditures are largely directed at public improvement projects. These projects are targeted to benefit residents, businesses, and visitors alike. Such projects include wayside restroom and beach access improvements, addition of park space, parking, and event space on Anchor Street, significant upgrades to the Lake Lionel Park and boat launch, and design of the Sandberg Trail through Rockaway Beach. Resources in general. The city's main revenue streams consist of water, sewer service charges, property taxes, and transient room taxes. The city's property tax rate of $0.988 per $1,000 assessed value is $0.988 per $1,000 assessed value. The combined rate of tax bonds in districts illustrates that the city is the lowest for all cities in Sonoma County. To date, water sewer service charges appear to be coming in as expected. Property taxes appear to be coming in as estimated and on time. Transit room tax is coming in above estimates. January 2023 marked the 5th year of the city's 5-year plan to incrementally increase water base rates by 3%, which resulted in approximately $1 per month increase to the users. Once again, the sewer system continues to operate under budget, and a rate increase is not needed in this fiscal year. The committee should always keep in mind that an eventual increase is inevitable since water rates have not been increased in 14 years. Drinking water infrastructure, a project for a growing community. As the city's occupancy rate increases, so does the demand on its drinking water infrastructure. To keep pace, it is vital that the city continue to make investments in its utilities by building in system redundancies, replacing undersized and aging pipelines, and by protecting its water supply. The Madonna Beach Water System Improvements Project will upgrade over 8,500 linear feet of aging steel and asbestos piping. Estimated cost over $2.5 million. This will be the city's largest project for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Funding shall consist of a combination of loans, forgivable loans, and city water funds through partnerships with Business Oregon and Oregon Drinking Water Services. Recruitment, meeting service requirements of a growing community. Citywide level of service expectations continue to rise each year. This is especially problematic as the city's high occupancy rate, historically reserved for the summer season, is now seemingly a year-round phenomenon. Additional staffing equals 3.5 FTE will be recruited to fill positions in administration, public works, and the fire department. As our community grows, so must the city's capability to meet the growing demand for these services. Other key issues and trends. Cost of goods and services continue to rise. As of February 2023, the annual inflation rate in the U.S. is 6%. Salaries and wages will be adjusted according to the employees' respective collective bargaining agreement. Merit and step increases will be applied as prescribed by the agreement. Non-represented employees are assumed at a rate determined within each contract. The budget amount will not exceed the maximum step of the corresponding pay range and will include a cost of living adjustment between 2.5 and 6.5%. Allocation of staff hours has been adjusted to reflect actual time work for specific departments and or specific changes to work schedules. Looking ahead, laying the groundwork for the future. It is important that funding be allocated to plan for the city's future. Following this highlights many of the forward-facing projects planned this year. Destination Management Plan. In October of this year, the city will undertake development of a destination management plan. This plan will create a roadmap for future projects funded by TRT revenue. Source Water Protection Plan. Moving to the future, the city applied for funding to develop a source water protection plan through the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. If awarded, this plan will identify actions to better manage the city's surface water source. Housing needs analysis. Completion of the housing needs analysis will likely occur during the 2023-24 budget year and will serve to identify any deficiencies within the city's current housing inventory. Housing production strategy. This study will identify specific actions, including the adoption of policies that promote development and address the city's housing needs as determined in the housing needs analysis. Mobile equipment replacement plans. A stormwater feasibility study. This study will evaluate flooding that exists on Coral Street and the surrounding neighborhood. Cost estimates will be developed for any solutions identified. Mobile equipment replacement plans. Both the fire department and the public works department will develop mobile equipment replacement plans. These plans will allow the city to plan ahead for major purchases such as vehicles, heavy equipment, electrical generators, and fire apparatus. The fire department, this fire department acquisition plan. The fire department acquisition plan will plan for acquisition of emergency response equipment, This fire department acquisition plan will schedule the department's purchase of items such as radios, tires, emergency medical equipment, and life-saving devices. The streets capital improvement plan. The city will undertake the evaluation of various roads under their jurisdiction and rank projects for repair. The resulting streets capital improvement plan will prioritize transportation projects for the next 5 budget years. Conclusion. Staff will work diligently on this well-balanced spending plan that promises significant public improvement projects, expanded service levels, and planning for the city's future. Preparation of the budget is truly a team effort, and I'd like to thank all those who helped. I'd like to give special thanks to our administrative staff and department heads for the work in developing those budgets. As always, this budget is conservative. Revenue estimates are not unrealistically low or overly optimistic, nor are the expenditures unrealistically low. Budget committee members need to keep in mind that budget is a plan and should not be viewed as an accounting report. Committee members and other leaders are to examine and study this document in detail and comment on the level of service it seeks to provide. Thank you for your work on this necessary process. With that, I formally submit the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget for your thoughtful consideration. Respectfully, City Manager Shepard.
Question.
Yes.
The asbestos piping, is any of that in the water main?
All of it's in the water main. Yes. It's asbestos water main.
It will not be hazardous to health unless it's broken and so forth.
Yes. Yeah. It needs to get into your respiratory system. So it adds a significant cost to the project to remove it.
And how much of the total is asbestos versus steel?
It's a good question. I would imagine the majority is majority of the larger diameter, 4 to 8 inch pipe is asbestos. A lot of the steel lines are smaller. Yes.
Thank you, City Manager Shepard. The Rockaway Beach Budget Committee is now scheduled to hold a public hearing on the possible uses of state revenue sharing funds. Notice of this public hearing was published in the March 14th edition of the Tillamook Headlight Herald, on the city website, at City Hall, and the Rockaway Beach Post Office. All documents have been available for inspection as required by state statute and city charter. At this time, I open the public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive public testimony on the possible uses of state revenue sharing funds. Anyone wishing to speak shall raise their hand, and until recognized, they shall then approach the podium and state their full name and address for the record. Person speaking shall address their comments to the Budget Committee as a whole and keep their comments to 5 minutes. Anyone joining us remotely who wishes to provide testimony can notify the meeting monitor by clicking the raise hand icon. We do not have anybody sign in. Is there anybody online or comments? Wish to make comments? Okay. All right. If there are no further speakers, I will close the public hearing at this time. Good thing they brought the left-handed guy. Our budget officer will present the proposed budget to the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee shall discuss the proposed budget, but please keep in mind approval and adoption will not occur at tonight's meeting. City Manager Shepard.
Hey. I want to present the budget to you. For those of you who have been around previous budget meetings, typically we've gone through page by page, line by line. And I've changed my approach this year. I've put a PowerPoint together, and hopefully it still gets the point across as far as what our budget looks like. It's a more modern presentation. We'll look at things. We'll look at things with a pretty high overview level. We'll look at our resources and our requirements, and then we'll look at our budget priorities and what we're going to do to try to meet those goals during this budget year. And if anybody has any questions, raise your hand, stop me. We'll discuss whatever you'd like. We'll try to keep it as informal as possible. I've got about 36 slides, so I think we could, I'm guessing it'll take about an hour to get through this. So anyway, if you have any questions along the way, stop and ask if we'll discuss anything along the way. So this is a snip of the Oregon LP1 form. We submit this form to the state of Oregon. We use this form when we notice our budgets. And it's about as condensed of a city budget as you can get. And it shows all of our resources, it shows all the money we have for the year, both revenue and resources that we have in the bank once the year begins. And then we've got all of our requirements as well. And all of our expenditures, all the money we're going to put aside that we choose not to spend. And municipal law, budget law, they have to match, and they do. And we have about a $25 million budget this year, so a pretty significant budget for the city. And I'm going to go through a lot of these categories with you here. Right? I want to start at looking at our resources in general. Our net working capital, that's money in the bank. Money we have in our fund account before we even receive any revenue in the year. It's our biggest resource, almost over $12 million net working capital in our budget this year. You can see we've got our property taxes, $400,000 property taxes. For a lot of cities, that's a significant source of revenue for them. For Rockaway, not as much as you would think. We have very low tax rates. You can see how big of a pie our property tax rates are. We've got service charges, and those are all of the fees we charge for the services that the city provides, and I'll go through those as well too. And then we've got a category of other resources, $5.5 million of other resources. We'll go over that. The interfund transfers, those are transfers between funds for the most part. A lot of that is transient revenue transfer to the general fund and the project reserve fund. So I think I'd like to go over the net working capital in a little bit of detail. We're going to start off with about $12 million in our beginning fund balances in various funds. Just a giant list of them right here. Most of our beginning fund balance are locked away in our utility funds, our water and sewer funds. I highlighted those in teal here. You know, they do make up the lion's share of our beginning fund balances. I'm sorry, I can't.
What's the license?
Okay, great. So the teal is all of the water and sewer funds with you see all their fund balances, and then in purple here you can see the TRT related funds and their beginning fund balances. And so between TRT related funds and our utility funds, you know, that's where the majority of our beginning fund balances are, which is funded. Other revenue, other resources, they're about $5.5 million. The categories of other resources, we'll go over that here too. About $5.5 million in other resources. On the bottom here in yellow, horizontal bar graph, I've got the two largest resources we're anticipating this year. The largest is in our water operating fund, and the majority of that is the funding for the Madonna Beach water main replacement project that we expect to receive. We believe it could cost as much as $2.8 million, and so we budgeted to receive that much in revenue. And I'll go over that with you all later in more detail. But that's the largest anticipated revenue is funds from the state of Oregon to carry out that project. And then we've got our transient room tax revenue. We've estimated $2.4 million this year to receive for transient room tax. We've got various other funds up top that make up a much smaller percentage of these other resources. Roads and streets receives about $115,000 Most of that is from the state of Oregon, ODOT. They share revenue with the city. City receives some interest on its investment funds, about $77,000. They've got about $77,000 in the general fund for revenue from other agencies, which is liquor tax, cigarette tax, marijuana tax, things like that. The $77,000 in general fund, other revenue from other agencies. But while we're on transient group tax, it's kind of put a simple chart here together, kind of tracking TRT revenue, annual revenue from about 2016 to 2023, 23 being an estimate. We don't know what that's going to be. We put a very simple trend line on there. So it's definitely increased over the years since 2016. And we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the long term. Is it going to continue to go up? Is it going to plateau? Is it going to come down? It's tough to tell. We estimated 1.9 million in revenue for this budget year. And so far, we've received 1.4 million. Except that 1.4 million is for only 2 out of the 4 quarters of collections. So what does that mean? Does that mean that the next 2 quarters are going to be just as strong, and we might take in 2.8 million, or are they going to be reduced and maybe 1.9 million? It's an accurate estimate. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen.
So 2 quarters were summer and fall.
I don't know which quarter it was. You could, and I'll just explain that the state's behind. Takes them, they wait a quarter and they're behind a quarter. Yes.
It's, so I'm assuming that the tax is based on the cost of the rental room, like if the room
Yes.
rents for $300, there's, as compared to $500, the tax would be higher on the $500. So is some of this increase because of increased cost or price of the rooms? Or is it because we have more people renting rooms? Or is it a combination of both of those?
It's a combination.
Okay.
And I don't have enough information to tell you anything beyond that, but it's definitely a combination. And over time, but I don't know off the top of my head the years, but we have raised the tax rate as well. But I just wanted to point out that it's a strong revenue source, but we don't know exactly where we're going to fall each year.
You never called it. Last year, whenever the state took over management of the collections, is part of it not just what you were seeing, counselors, but that it might also be that we're actually collecting more of what was owed to us.
Yes, that could be as well. And so it's a tough time to make estimates because that's going on as well. And we anticipate the state's going to be good at
Right.
I've got a question now on CRT for future, which is, I believe, very important to Rockaway Beach. Rockaway Beach was founded as a resort town in 1909. It's been that way up until present times, still that way. And there's been a lot of talk in the city about vacation rentals, and blah, blah, blah. By local people. And I would hate to think that would influence the decision making of the council when it comes to planning. And my belief is that when we should keep bringing in as much ERT as possible, because that's funding of each percentage of the budget. So I hate to have that decline because of something that we did. So I would like to make sure that the heads are all in the right place. Yeah, they can change, If people wanted to make it more of a residential area than a resort, that would come at a big cost. So we've got to face that in the future and educate people on why the vacation rentals are a key part of the city so that they understand it.
See, I think it's gonna be worth talking about the service charges as well as some of our resources. $3.2 million in revenue for charges, service charges for the city. Down below, I've got the larger ones, and they're the water and sewer base rates. Those are the two largest sources of service charge for the city. The general fund collects about almost $500,000 through short-term rental licenses, franchise fees, and permit fees, and also the emergency management, emergency services fee as well. Included in that. So those are the largest service charges we collect. There are various other charges shown above, a lot related to the water and sewer bill as well. There are charges on the bill for debt service and master plans and things like that. We also collect services when we install new water and sewer service connections. And we collect SDC fees for new developments for water, sewer, and also transportation. Pretty good breakdown there of all the fees we collect for services we provide.
When was the last time the city had an adjustment to the sewer service rate?
It was 14 years ago, I believe in 2009.
And,
Same with the water and sewer SDCs. They were at the same time period. Yeah, it's been a while.
what has happened to the cost base to deliver that sewer service rate since then?
Well, it's increased substantially, absolutely. Yeah.
So both the city and both the water and the sewer were last adjusted in 2014. Both of them.
Yeah, okay, so the water service base rate, we adjusted that in, I think it was 2017 or 18. But that was just a base rate. And we also included, it was just a pretty significant increase in the base rate for water. And in addition to that, that base rate was increased 3% every year for 5 years. The sewer base rate was not increased at that time. That was increased back in 2009, I believe. Both the water and the sewer rates, water and sewer SDC fees, they have not been increased since 2009. And a lot of the other fees haven't been increased either. The sewer debt service fees, water master plan fund. None of those other smaller fees have been increased. The only increase I'm aware of in the last 10 years or 14 years is water base rate.
What is SDC?
System development charge. And so when a new home is developed, we have to pay a fee that goes into our account so we can increase the capacity of our water system or past costs to create the water system that's available to them to use.
Just so I can clarify here. So if water was last increased in 2018 and it can have an incremental increase for the next 5 years,
Yeah,
that would make it like this would be the last year.
it's
of
the
that
last year.
increase?
That's right. This January is the last year.
Okay.
So we covered the resources that want to go through. So I'd like to go over the requirement side of the equation. Now, where does all the money go? Where does it end up each year? For this year, there's $24.8 million to account for. The largest share of our capital outlay of our requirements is in capital outlay funds or capital outlay projects, about 7.9 million slated in that direction this year. But we also save quite a bit of money for the future. We're putting almost $7.6 million in funding away for future years, for future projects. And then we've got our personnel services up top, and materials and services, both about 2.5 million. Personnel services is of course all of our employees, and the materials and services is all the things the employees need to get their job done. We've got our contingencies, money allocated, but not available unless the council takes action. So should something come up, we need a little extra spending money, we have some set aside that could be available. Of course, we have some debt service as well. I just want to go over some of the capital outlay. All right, so down the bottom, we've got the largest funds where we've got some capital outlay projects slated. Number one is the water operating fund. The lion's share of that again is funding for the Donna Beach water main replacement project. But our project and equipment reserve fund has $2.4 million budgeted spent there, and that is for the transient impacts TRT funded public improvement projects, Lake Lytle, the Wayside, Anchor Street, Sandberry Trail. I'll go through all those later on. But yeah, the biggest expenditures this year are capital outlay projects, big public improvement projects. And we've got some smaller amounts budgeted in various other funds, mostly water and sewer funds. We've got some road projects. And, fire equipment reserve fund has some money set aside too. I'm going to go over all the capital projects we have scheduled this year later on, but have a nice breakdown of where all the capital outlays in planning spent this year. And then, like I said, we reserve a lot for the future expenditures, $7.5 million. Again, I've got kind of the list of various funds where we are planning to put that funding. And in yellow, I've highlighted all the water and sewer funds again. That's where most of our reserve for future expenditure funds are going. Water sewer funds, transit room tax has some, fire equipment, the reserve fund has some. So this is where we are setting money aside. And so that's a basic overview of our budget this year, and especially our resources and requirements. And I'd be happy to go into any details now or later on with any of you. But that was kind of a 30,000-foot look at all of our resources. I do want to go into some of our budget priorities and specifically what we're going to do to try to meet those this year. So we've got three main goals this budget year. Number one is we want to have some significant investment in Rockaway Beach, mainly through public improvement projects. I'll go over those. We'd like to expand city service capabilities, expand emergency services, utilities, administration, code enforcement. And then we want to set aside funds to plan for future years, bring some feasibility studies, develop some plans, prioritize purchasing and other projects. But as far as public improvement projects go, we've got TRT funded projects, and like I said earlier, TRT still remains strong, and we've got pretty hefty fund balance built up for projects, tourism facility projects. That's what the money is available for. It's either advertising or public improvement projects, but they have to be tourism facility projects. And so we've tried to pick projects that are tourism facility projects, but also benefit business owners and residents. So we've got the Lake Lyle Park Improvement Project, $350,000 budget for that. Wayside restroom and beach access, $900,000 set aside for that. Anchor Street Park and parking event space, $685,000 for that. And then $140,000 for the Sandberry Trail project. This is all pre-construction money. The Wayside and Anchor Street are probably the closest to being ready to go. And we're finalizing those now, and we'll bring this to council for final approval. Lake Lyle Park improvements. Planning Commission is going to continue to work on that for a little bit longer, and then the council will approve the concept that the Planning Commission comes up with, and then send it off to engineers to design. And kind of in parallel to that, I'm going to work with the city council on the lease agreement for the property, from the county, for the Lake Lyle property. And the Sandberry Trail pre-construction. We've got about a year to get some cost estimates, decent cost estimates in place, and get a design memorandum put together. Because there's a lot of money available, so it's going to disappear, but a lot of money available for construction. And so there's about a window that's going to close in about a year that we need to kind of push for to be ready to get some of that money. And then, of course, we've got our utilities. We've got some pretty large public improvement projects planned for those. And as the town's occupancy rate seems to continue to be up year round, it's important that we try to keep pace with that. So we have a water main replacement project, one of our smaller water projects. I believe this is between South Second and South 4th Street. Includes some road work and some storm drain work and water main replacement. We've got some pumps, the wastewater treatment plant that we can replace. But the largest project on the utility side is the Donna Beach water main replacement project. And we've got penciled in there 2.8 million. That project, I think that's worth talking about. So anyway, it's the largest project this year. Like I said in the budget message, about 8,500 feet of piping, or steel asbestos piping. Really not a reliable part of our water system. A lot of main breaks. It's not very reliable, low capacity. So we need to fix all that. We say as high as 2.8 million. And so the process is we're going to work with the state to put together a funding package for us. Funding will consist of loans, forgivable loans, and also cash from our coffers. And we don't know exactly what that package is going to look like at this point. What we've done to date is send a letter of intent to the state, letting them know later on this year, we're going to work with you to put together a package. And we don't know exactly what the project is going to cost at that time, but it could cost as much as 2.8 million. So they hopefully set aside that amount of money for us when we're ready. The nice thing is the loan forgiveness of 30 to 40% is common for cities of our size and our income bracket here, medium income. So it really makes a lot of sense to try to get the biggest project you can if you're looking at the potential 40% of the project cost will be forgiven. Yes.
A couple of questions. It's a funding package. if some of those parts of that package, like forgivable loans or whatever, don't come through, is the city prepared to pick up that additional cost, or do we just not do the project? What happens if that doesn't all come together as a package?
We're not gonna, we're not gonna touch a shovel until we have the whole package, said and done, and this will, Dave, where we like,
Okay, okay. We're gonna start the show.
so, we're gonna put the package together, we'll bring it to the council. The council will approve whatever the package is, for this project. But we've tried to budget the various parts of our budget, whether it's on the revenue side or, potentially looking at making the first payment on the potential debt that we take on, or a cash match through our master plan fund or water operating fund. So we've tried to put money in places, so that we'll be ready for whatever the package looks like. The city council will make the final call on whether we move forward or not.
So this is for Donna, and I think in the prior slide you talked about, we have to do the same thing here in Rockaway Beach proper.
Yeah, no, we have, there's a lot of places in the water system that
And we don't have much time.
for the whole rest of it. We have a master plan, a water master plan. I think there were $20 to $50 million for projects listed in that plan. That plan is probably 10 years old. There's a lot of work to be done. We think this is a great place to start. We think we can kind of tackle an entire area where we've had the most recurring water main breaks. We know the system was installed maybe substandard to what we do now. And it's a very, very difficult place for us to find leaks before they become water main breaks, for various reasons. Its location and pipe material and all that. So, our goal is it's nice to have redundancy and building capacity, but there's only so much water on Jetty Creek, and we can either find more water or we can stop the water losses. And we think this is a really good place to start to do that. All right, and then second goal, kind of meet what seems to be a growing demand for services here in the city. It's kind of a cliche, your most valuable asset employee, but it is true. It certainly is true. And like we talked about before, the occupancy rate seems to keep going up. And what I mean is, we are expanding, but would you like to talk about this, Chief?
Sure. That's
If you'd like.
prepared, but sure. What can I add?
Well, we were talking about occupancy, and maybe what you've noticed. How busy has it gotten for your department?
Our department, since I took over 3 years ago, has about tripled our response. Well, not abilities, but our response to calls. And huge increase. Visitors, we actually track that data, who's visitors, who's local. Still pretty good balance, about 50-50, but we've been busy.
And we are expanding, and growing, but it's also 2/3 of our homes are second homes, and whether it's renters or the homeowners being present, it seems like we're full almost year round now. That's always been the case.
And I would say, add to that, when I was hired, I was told during the winter months, you could go lay down in 101 and not get ran over. There was just that limited traffic. We were at summertime from Memorial Day to Labor Day. It's ears and elbows, you're busy. And now we're not seeing any letdown year round. You see at the council level and the public level, our calls, February, we're running more than one call a day. It's increased a lot. So
And I didn't mean to call you out. I thought you wanted to come up here
Oh, no, I was up here. I do have some data if they have any questions, so yeah, but we're looking at, the budget looks good to us this year. It's, just like Luke has been telling you, we're expanding our services and moving our mission forward, so. I guess I'll just offer this, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them or clarify anything that's in your budget, that you have.
I was gonna say, but there'll probably be lots of questions when we get to the fire department.
Sounds great, yeah, and I do have some numbers and data that I could answer. for you. No, Luke, you're doing a wonderful job.
Right,
Yes.
I have a question or maybe a statement. No surprise to you or Luke that I am not a proponent of having new apparatus purchased for the fire department this size and number of calls per year. And having been a fire chief myself, I didn't have the luxury of new equipment. Is definitely nice and more reliable, etc. That I still think that the department this size could get by with used equipment, which is definitely a lower cost situation. One other question.
Sure.
How many 911 calls do you have that an engine would pump water?
It's a lot lower number than it's ever been, by far.
Approximately.
Say 25 out of 500 calls.
So if you bought a new ladder, if you bought a new engine, and just say just one of those go out every time, that would mean that approximately $2,500 just in the cost of an engine going out per call. I think that's pretty significant. I am just asking that you try to go if you can find good used equipment, which I've seen a few out there, and I've purchased a lot of new equipment, used equipment in my tenure as fire chief. I would go that way first and not automatically go to new equipment. Now I know that your compadres mostly all buy new equipment, so it's very difficult in that regard to buy you. Get off my.
And I'll be quick, I can quickly answer that question, actually. I've grown up my entire career with used equipment. We didn't buy new. But I will tell you, since about 2020, there was a pandemic came on, there are almost no used apparatus that are economically feasible. A brand new fire engine will cost you about $600,000. I used one, they're still selling for $450,000 to $500,000. I was looking last night to be able to answer this very question. They're high if they're compliant. You can buy old equipment that's non-compliant, no warranty, or find something like we have over here. They are more economically feasible, but not something that works. I've never been a proponent of new until I find myself in that situation today. Both the equipment we've always bought here in Rockaway was bought new. And it just kind of just way of the times.
One last question
Yes.
for you. It has to do with just the whole economics of having a fire department. Garibaldi and Lee City, it looks like they're going to form their.
A district, right.
Yeah. Is there any more thoughts of Rockaway joining that?
The short version, we always keep our ears open and talk to see what benefits us. And at this point, consolidation or district does not benefit the city of Rockaway.
So if I could I respond also, David, to that? Because I have really researched this as a city councilor, and I've had meetings with the mayors of Bay City and Garibaldi recently about it, because I wanted to make sure we're making the best decision. But it really boils down to they have a fire tax levy that we don't have. And they have, and their citizens are paying a pretty decent amount taxes for theirs. And what both of those mayors told me was they thought if they could bring Rockaway in, they could spread their cost out for their citizens. We would now have to pay a tax for something we're getting for $5 a month. We would now have to also pay a fire property tax. They could spread their costs out to us, and our cost would jump up pretty high.
They admitted that to you?
Yes, yes.
So they
Yes.
didn't want it to happen.
Yeah, and then they also said they thought maybe we would deed over the 10 acres at the end of Third Street for the new fire district. We thought they could get that from us. So it was all based on making it more feasible for them. It was not making it more economically feasible for Rockaway. And I told them, I felt like if we went to our residents and said, you're getting really good EMT and fire service now for $5 a month. If we start asking you to pay a high fire tax, would you be happy with that? They'd probably say no.
My bottom line question is there a cost benefit analysis made to see if it's feasible or not? Because that's the only way you're going to find out.
Yeah, we've looked into all that, but maybe we can continue this conversation later.
One thing I'd like to add is, and I don't know, because I'm not a fireman, about new versus used equipment. I just know either are very expensive. And I remember, Chief, you gave a talk several meetings ago explaining what equipment you needed and the cost of that.
Right,
And so, I like current budgets, but I also like future budgets.
right.
And one of the things, and that is kind of like why I asked the question about the asbestos in the city of Rockaway and how much that might be is, your future needs.
Right.
How are we going to start budgeting for that and setting money aside, or what was the process to get, so that when you need to have these things, the funds are there?
You're exactly right. You and I are from the same mold. You should be planning for the future enough that when it comes time to replace something, that it's budgeted already. And that is kind of something that hasn't happened over the past, well, just in the past. And so there's very limited amounts in our reserve funds. So I did make a capital plan. I've got a lot of those numbers and what it takes to not only take care of our current needs, but to start putting something aside for the future.
Maybe just future, we might want to start talking about that.
Right.
Future budgets.
Right, and I have done that internally, and because I know it's gonna impact the budgets going forward, but it's kind of like playing catch up right now. But yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I'm definitely a used fan, but they're not out there right now. I'll answer any other questions when we get.
Thank you, Chief.
You bet.
I think we were talking about employees here. So some of the areas we know we're short on, code enforcement, fire and medical responses, outreach and communication, records management, the ability to go after grants and other funding. And water and wastewater compliance is kind of an umbrella that covers a lot of what goes on our utility side. And that industry just continues to be, it's been nice, it just gets more and more complicated each year. And so we really do need to have the staff on hand to make sure we can meet all those expectations and requirements on the city. Number 3, planning for the future. It was interesting the conversation with our fire chief. I think we started 3 years ago. I'm not sure we had anything set aside for the fire department. We've done everything we can to sock money away at as fast as we possibly can, but we're at such a deficit. I'm not sure how we'll ever get there, but we are trying. So we're doing a number of things. We're putting plans together for some land use administration. We're going to plan for some future projects, roads projects, capital purposes, stormwater protection. I went over a lot of these in the budget, as a budget message. But we're going to do a destination management plan, Tilton Coast. He's going to work on that with us, and that's going to plan our transient room tax projects, our tourism related facility projects. What's the next wayside, or what's the next boardwalk That's kind of what we'll do with that destination management plan. And that's nice, it'll be free, until it goes to do that at no cost. Our housing needs analysis will likely get completed this year. That'll be followed by the housing production strategy, give us some practical steps we can take or rules we can implement to solve any housing deficiencies. We're going to look at our roads inventory, put a plan together for the next 5 years. What roads are we going to fix and when? How much is that going to cost? We're going to look at flooding on Coral Street, the issue there. If there are any solutions, we'll get some cost estimates, and council can decide whether they want to move forward on those or not. And of course, look at our watershed. We've got a grant application to the Department of Environmental Quality, and that's successful. We'll be able to look at our watershed, see what the issues are out there, and put a plan together so 10, 20, 50 years from now, we know we've got an abundant clean water source for Rockaway Beach. That's the plan. We're also going to look at all of the equipment our city has. We have over 40 pieces of mobile equipment, and I don't mean wheelbarrows. These are fire trucks, dump trucks, backhoes, big industrial-sized electrical generators. And they're very expensive, and we need them every day. We need them for emergencies. And so both the fire department and the public works department are going to draft replacement plans and schedule with cost estimates. And we'll run those plans through the council. And once those plans are approved, they will have funding allocated in this budget to begin to make some of those purchases. So fire department, in our budget this year, they'll have $300,000 allocated to some major purchases, $75,000 for things that aren't mobile, medical devices, turnouts, things like that. And public works wants money for replacement of their mobile equipment.
Does public works do their own maintenance on the equipment?
They do a lot of maintenance when they're able to. A lot of things are anything electronic. It's complicated these days. Anything where there's kind of a safety issue, we'll farm it out. But they try to do as much of their maintenance as possible. Is that it? Okay, so that was most. I got a few slides left. That's most of what I had planned to kind of go over tonight as far as a broad overview of our budget, resources requirements, what our budget priorities are, and how we plan to kind of meet those. But overall, it's a big budget. It's kind of exciting. It's a little daunting. I think it's going to be challenging, to say the least. But I think our staff is ready to take on the challenge of a budget like this. And I think it could be very rewarding for us and for our citizens. There are a lot of public improvement projects planned for this year. But as far as the budget goes, I think Rockaway's at a point now where it's the real work is ahead of us. The real work is where are we going to be in 2 years? 2 years from now. 2 years from now, we need to be able to say, we're ready to look ahead for 5 years or 10 years. And so, yeah, we know what we want to accomplish. We know what service levels are required, what our citizens want, and we have the funding in place to make that happen over the long term. And that's not something Rockaway, as far as I've been part of it, has really been able to do. But we have to get away from quick fund revenue in addition to hoping the transient room tax continues to rise. Prioritize the services we provide, really get to the bottom of what do our citizens want from us and what do they actually need, and finalize balance between those. And what we can afford to do in the long term. And then continue to streamline our operations. There's been a lot of changes lately, over the last 5 years here at Rockaway. Demographics have changed, service level expectations have changed. The the age, the annual median income of those who live in town, it's all changed pretty quickly, and we're trying to adapt at the same time. And we need to spend some time to figure out what we're gonna be moving forward, and then go after the revenues that it's gonna take to continue this type of budget year after year after year, and I think we've got about 2 years to figure that out. So the budget's fun, but the real work is out in front of us.
Comment?
Yes,
I want to first commend you on your presentation. It's very good and broke out nicely and easy to understand. Some people on the committee, and I'm not sure that it might seem like drinking water out of a fire hose. It's a lot coming at one particular point in time, a lot of data. I think that, since we don't do zero-based budgeting in Rockaway, that it's basically what their expenses and revenue are in this coming or the past year to date, which I'm really pleased to see the handouts that were put on the net. It's basically what's happening in the past, plus new projects and employees, et cetera, for the future. 1 billion line items, but in order for the budget committee to actually do its job, I think they have to understand what's happened this past year, plus what's going to happen in some detail. So I've got a suggestion, and I served as commissioner of the hospital and on the board of 2 nonprofits, and we had a finance committee that met monthly, I think too often, that went over with the CEO or whoever the president was, the nonprofit, and went through monthly, but I suggest quarterly, members of the budget committee meet and go over what's going on quarter by quarter so that they understand the makeup. And if anything is changing, they understand what you're talking about when you make the presentation.
yeah, and that's not uncommon. Lawsuits do that.
And also, David, something that new that has changed just with city council, like within a month or 2, I'm not sure when it changed, is we now get a very detailed report of all the check registers and every penny that was spent in the city that month, instead of just a summary like we used to. And so maybe that could be made available to the other budget committee members if they wanted to look at it. I don't know, but.
Mary, that's listed on the website every month.
Oh, really?
Under the finance tab, the financial statement for the month is listed on
Yeah,
And it's so new that people may not be aware of it.
yeah, that's my item, and also during this finance committee, when we met monthly, we went over each one. When you get used to it, what's glaring and what isn't. So you don't mess with the small stuff, but there's usually a few that questions have to be asked so that it's understand. So.
Well, speaking of that, maybe I was just gonna ask if you would tell the new members what happens at our next budget committee meeting.
All right, so at our next budget committee meeting, we'll have another public hearing. And it'll be an opportunity for members of the public to make comment on the budget now that it's been out, it's been presented. And the budget committee will have the opportunity to make changes to the budget through motion. And if we're on track and on time, the second meeting, budget committee might be in a position to approve that budget and move it on to the city council. If they aren't able to do that, then it'll be another meeting. that's a different process. We can go more about, go over any other questions, or if the budget committee would like to see more information that maybe hasn't been made available to them, we can make that available to them. If I meet with staff, talk about what's going on with the fire department, what's going on with public works, we can make that happen. Yeah, we're flexible, we work for you all.
You have enough employees if you're not working 12 hours a day?
I'm certainly not working 12 hours a day. I think about work probably 24 hours a day, but I'm not here in the office. No, but I do work 5 days a week, but I try to do 8 hours.
Does respond to text on the weekend.
Excuse me. I like to speak.
Oh.
I'd like to commit that part of the schedule for such a. She's been in the exigencies regarding building the last 2 years. And I want to see if I can want it budget that's been presented to you.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And another thing about the process, because I know we do have several new people here. So when, as the city manager said, it goes to city council approves it or can tweak it a little bit. And then once it goes to the city council, then there's several other steps to make sure that the budget is in compliance. Every year we have an audit, which I think, compared like you, other things I've been in, David, is one of the most thorough audits I've seen. And they even, after they have, it's an independent audit. And then they independently ask each of us city council people to make comments and concerns privately with them that we may have. And if we would raise a concern, then they go back and relook at that. So we now get item by item check register. We have the thorough audit. So I just want to assure everyone that I know that some of our neighboring cities have not been this transparent in their budgeting work, but here in Rockaway, we have been pretty transparent, very transparent.
One thing I've noticed, however, in years that I've been attending council meetings or it's not a lot of questions, even on the check register, there's not a lot of questions. And that makes my mind wonder if somebody's really looking at it or not. So I don't know, but it seems that there should be more.
I think he's got.
Well, I was just gonna, in meetings I attended prior to being elected mayor, I heard questions about the check register. So somebody on the council is looking
There's
at
been
it.
a couple.
Yeah.
And I can assure you that I'm looking at it thoroughly and asking questions if I see something that needs to be raised. So, yeah, you can lead a horse to water, can't make them drink, but put the information out there and make it available. The expectation is that councils and the mayor pay attention to that information.
Great council, that we should.
Yeah, and I think we did. I can't speak for other councilors, of course, but for myself, I generally understand everything that's presented each month. And so that's why I may not ask a question, because I simply don't have any questions. Or I might actually, if a new item suddenly appears, it's not been on there month to month, I might email Luke and say, I don't understand this, what does this mean, you know? But generally, I think because we look at it every month, we pretty much understand it, you know?
Since you've been on the council, the biggest question or on the council, so I know we do.
Oh, thank you, David. But I think I know other people, other councilors are looking at it too. And it's like I said, if something new doesn't pop up and it's something we understand, we're probably not going to ask a question.
Kim, I think it's back to your comment about quarterly meetings with the budget committee.
Sure.
Are you making a recommendation on a go forward basis, some structural change to how this committee operates? Is that what you're asking for? I wasn't quite sure if there was an action item coming out of it.
Yeah, a structural change where we quarterly with something that understands.
So you're talking less of a public meeting or? Is it?
I don't think you can't meet in private.
Yeah, I mean,
No, but I mean, that
Yeah.
are you coming just for the budget committee or the city council?
Well, we are part of the budget committee.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So another process, and Luke, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, because there's a good chance I am. But once the city council approves the budget, then it leaves the purview basically of the budget committee and becomes under the purview of the city council. And the city council can, within certain legal limits that are very limited, we can move money around. So the purpose of having the whole budget committee meet with Luke throughout the year would just to keep us informed, maybe?
We selected 2 members out of a 5-member board to be on the finance committee looking for it. So it's not, I don't think the whole.
Oh, you're talking about a finance committee. I thought you were talking about all of us meet with Luke. Sorry about that, David. I misunderstood.
It's just, you know, and be able to, if we see something that's different, that it doesn't seem, that it's hard to review. So I think the people that should be there are the ones that do not have a solid background in finance where they can learn and contribute to the whole budget process.
And to add a little bit to what you were saying, Councilor Hughes, even the city council alone at a council meeting is fairly restricted in discussing what are we going to budget for next year, what projects or positions are we going to fund. And so a lot of cities do have more than 2 budget committee meetings a year. And it's sometimes nice to be able to get together with the group and talk about how we're looking for next year, what projects we're going to fund. It's very tough sometimes for a small city when you have to point out inconvenient truths or facts about our budget or our revenue sources. And it's nice to have a group that's designated to do that and say, hey, you know what? A few years revenue is going to be pretty short, or we've got some big projects we want to look at, or positions we want to look at. Maybe the emergency service fee isn't doing what it used to do, or the water rates too low. You know, it's an avenue to begin those discussions that could probably be helpful for us.
So are you, because I'm still trying to clarify, David, all of this, are you saying this whole group meet and do that, or are you saying city council create a finance committee?
I think it should be the budget committee. And
Budget
and
committee,
if there's a consensus for more information, I'd be happy to look into that and bring a recommendation at our next meeting on how we move forward and meet more often. That's what.
I actually love that idea. You're right, David. And one of the issues is, I mean, when you come here once a year, it's, you know, you're getting one piece of information away you go. The other advantage of things throughout the year too is, you know, we don't see, you know, we don't even have the end of the prior year actual information. So it'd be nice to get that, and then also current year or next budget year, getting actual to budget to see as the years progress and what's going on. Sort of anticipate, and as Luke said, you know, maybe start looking at the future a little bit rather than just coming in sort of, swooping in at the last second and approving the budget that's already.
I mean, it would be an interesting idea to have us meet maybe like 3 other times a year, like, sometime after the fiscal year to look back and reflect, and then, sometime in that December timeframe where you have opportunity to, maybe brainstorm staff about goals
Pick
or
some
whatever. I mean, I can see.
key milestones of the year or important dates of the year.
Does everyone in the budget committee get it? I mean, is it online? I know they get a copy, but is it online where they can see the audit from last year?
I mean, the finance portion of the website is not seen in terms of like any of the students to go and look at stuff. Like it's really is. I think
A lot of transparency.
there's a lot of transparency. I just don't think people, agree with you. I don't think people know that they can go look at it. And I remember during my first budget meeting, realizing it was there and then going back home and realizing that I could go back and look at everything. So I mean, I do think that's great. I think we should also encourage other citizens.
I'm trying to get them interested. That's something.
Everybody likes to complain and then they don't realize that it's right there, it's right there.
Okay, well, I'll put something together.
Again, with the understanding that once city council approves the budget, all we would be doing is discussing and getting information. We, as a budget committee, can't change something that the city council has approved.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
be forward looking
Okay.
information.
Any further budget discussion? Comments? I'd also like to add my compliments, City Manager Shepherd. This was an outstanding presentation, and you know I have PowerPoint and you do incredible PowerPoints that are well presented with lots of good information in a way that's very easy to follow and understand. So kudos to that. All right. Well, since there's no additional discussion, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The budget committee meeting is adjourned at 6:19.